Welcome to the Rebecca Panapinto Project. Today, I'm excited to interview James Shearer. A driven and analytical leader, James has over 20 years of experience continually developing a strong, ongoing relationship with influencers within any organization. He guides proven sales and marketing tool implementation with businesses that have been heavily impacted by rapid growth, change, or crisis. As a decisive and fact-minded executive, James consistently increases project and process function effectiveness by aligning unique attributes of the technology, healthcare, retail, and entertainment industries. James earned an MBA in entrepreneurship from Belmont University, and he currently resides in Nashville, Tennessee with his wife and their 2 daughters. Today, we'll talk a lot about the incredible work that James is doing for Keller Schrader, so I hope you enjoy the show. James, welcome to the show today.
Hey, how are you, Rebecca?
Life is good. It's great to see you. Thanks for visiting us from Nashville.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. We were talking earlier while we were preparing for the show about how we met, and it was very much like random networking passing. I want to say maybe at the Entrepreneur Center as well. Do you remember?
Yeah, it was actually the 3686 conference
Right.
that they used to have before COVID. And we met at the, I think it was the Bongo Java in the Omni Hotel, because there was like a bunch of people that were there for business wise and just kind of, small business and entrepreneurs trying to find, context in their businesses. And so I think we both had multiple meetings there that day. So
yes, love it. So is the entrepreneur context. And in true networking fashion, we've stayed in touch through different careers, different adventures, different states. So I love that we're now here having this conversation of what your journey's been and how it's led to you to where you're at today. So right now you are managing sales and biz dev for Keller Schrader.
Yep.
And would love to chat more about your experiences there and how you're impacting customers' business, really with the idea of what does digital transformation mean within the context of what you guys are able to do for your customers.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
Awesome. Let's do it. So let's chat about maybe some use cases of what you guys are able to do within your industry. I know it's a lot of data and analytics. Where do you guys start with your customer to really help them understand how their business can be impacted by what you guys are working on?
I think a lot of it starts with the discovery call, as you would call it. Sitting down with them and even understanding from if it's a data strategy need, because for us, that's a relatively new service over the last 2 or 3 years. It's been profitable. We also look at, the other services that we offer in the security realm, in the infrastructure realm, and whether or not at this point, I was thinking about this before we talked, is, a lot of services in the transformation realm are going to be cost saving services, because you have such a constraint in the supply chain right now that it's really hard to bring about, products and services that are going to promote money at this point. So for us, looking at digital transformation as a way to reduce costs, reduce lost time, recycle some of the stuff that companies are losing, and really, doing science and math to do better things for our clients.
Well, no, this is all great. And I think what's really helping you guys to accelerate your success is verticalization as well. So from what I understand, you found a niche within like manufacturing and power and utilities. Can you give us some examples of the pain those folks are seeing, especially like you mentioned with the supply chain as it is, and how you're inserting yourself to solve those problems?
We have some projects that are in line with local plants and, that are utilities, whether it's gas, electric, whether it's aluminum. And some of the things we look at is, really kind of being like a staff augmented reporting analytics arm for some of those companies, where they are saying, okay, we have some use case that we're doing. We need some portfolio management. How can you help us? Or we have some analytics around like our recycling needs, our scrap needs. How can you help us understand a better way to use what we are losing in order to save money? We also look at the opportunity for, some Power BI, some SQL reporting analytics. And also, I think the biggest pain point is like I said, when you offer a service, one of the things we talk about is, it's such a protracted experience for some emergency responses in the utilities world, whether it's gas, electric. And one things that we can do is we can actually reduce the time frame between the initial call for the emergency or the outage to the time that it's resolved, by basically looking at, okay, you have these 6 or 7 steps. What can we do from an analytics standpoint to drop those steps to 3 or 4? Maybe move it to something that's more mobile, more agile, and is going to reduce the time frame that people are waiting for their service to be restored. So, and plus that also helps the client that we work with help have a better service and keep customers happy. So it's a win-win for both the customer and their customer. So
Is there an element of maybe human error that's reduced by introducing more visibility into the data as well?
I believe so, because right now you're talking about some of these people are having to call in outages or call in emergencies. There may be a mix up in the language that is being used. There might be an issue with a language barrier. So when people are automatically being able to edit and add the information directly into a mobile app or directly into indirectly into the website, if they have access to it, then they're able to kind of cut down on the error that they're going to be possibly constrained by. So
That's good. I would think in a lot of these cases, it's the first time there's been an awareness of the data, correct?
yes,
And you guys are saying, hey, measure and monitor these other aspects of your business to get a different outcome.
Yes, I mean, most of the people that we have brought in as employee owners of Keller Schrader have come from other companies that have used data analytics to be successful. So it's not just us, inventing the wheel to say, or reinventing the wheel of data strategy for our company. We're actually bringing people with, practical real world based knowledge into our company to, make things better for our clients. So,
and ultimately, yeah, their customers get to benefit
yeah.
as well. I love the emergency situations. We had talked about a use case in a gas emergency and how you can reduce the steps, reduce error, and I think really bring stress relief to the situation.
Yeah.
Is there a little bit more around the impact that study had that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a situation where it's a series of disconnected steps in the business process. And by using some data to highlight where there are discrepancies in that business process, you can make it more streamlined. So almost making it more like a project management process where you're able to get the research, the design, the planning, and the coordination and evaluation all down to a very finite point where it's super streamlined, as opposed to having these hiccups that we had just talked about with, errors here, errors in the research, errors in the design. You're using people who are, scientists and architects and engineers to really almost reformulate processes that have been in place for years and to make them more useful for our clients. So,
as I say, in that industry, is there hesitation or maybe a feeling of threat to some folks that, like, we've kind of always done it this way, this is how things work, it's big machinery, it's expensive, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And now introducing technology to it, do you realize sometimes some hesitation, some just a little bit of a concern maybe of what this data and this AI will do to their business?
I think when you talk about like stuff like using artificial intelligence, machine learning to really take away the human aspect, I feel like obviously people feel like, job security is a big issue for certain people that are involved in streamlining the business process. I feel like you are in a situation also where some of these services that are kind of set in stone with their business model or their business process are always hesitant to change. But ultimately, you're looking at it as, we're trying to help you do your job better, and we're trying to alleviate some of your pain points, which in turn alleviate the customer's pain points. So it's helpful to really kind of step back and say, to the client, hey, I know this is a really long procurement cycle. I know this is a really long implementation and migration cycle, but in the long run, it's either going to A, save you money, or B, it's going to make your customers happier. And hopefully it's A and B. So
Yeah. Sometimes I think make customers happier is harder to quantify.
Mhm.
So when you make it make sense financially, and then they get the added bonus of their customers are like, where has this been all of our lives?
Yeah.
Then you're lifelong partners, and then you have
Yeah.
something to build upon.
Mhm.
Do you foresee a future in other industries and verticals being able to, be applicable to what you guys are doing?
I mean, we work with some other companies currently that are in the manufacturing world, that are in the pharmaceutical world. We've had conversations with people, obviously, in healthcare world, fintech, financial. So we do have 6 or 7 current use case studies, white paper clients that we can use that are across 2 or 3 industries. So, our hope is, using the data strategy arm of Keller Schrader allows us to not only solidify relationships we already have, that are maybe strictly infrastructure relationships or application relationships, but allow us to be trusted advisors and really offer something else that can help the client. So.
Very cool. I like it. And your background has been, heavily sales, project
Mhm.
management.
Yep.
So I'm sure all of that led you to being a good fit for this current role, but stepping back to what your sales process, your project management process, and what that evolution of really how you go to market and how you approach your role now, what does that look like? And what have been some of the key influences to really develop and hone that craft to be successful?
I think to be, successful in sales, it really is a project, process. I've worked with some people in Nashville who, look at the customer life cycle as not only sales, but marketing to sales to customer success, and doing everything from defining what your leads are going to be, defining who you're going after, to creating that content, to nurturing the relationship, to eventually closing the deal, and then hopefully getting some cross sales in there and some referrals that lead you to other businesses. I have found the most success really in networking, kind of like we talked about at the beginning of the show.
How we met.
How we met, and really looking at it as people are going to do business with people who are referred to them, who have, like I talked about earlier, we're trusted advisors with our company, trust us, have that rapport, have that camaraderie. And so I look at the sales process as almost a project process of 5 or 6 steps, really, to audit what I do as a salesperson and a marketer, and kind of use lead generation, use technology, always kind of looking at my sales pipeline, my sales performance, and managing myself before anybody else has to manage me. So.
Mhm. So is there data that you track and manage
Oh yeah.
yourself all the
So
time?
yeah. So um, I like to use a couple of different vendor partners in the CRM space to track not only my personal connectors and my personal network, but also our own internal Keller Schrader prospects and clients. So I use 2 different CRMs to really keep track of things. We use lists, we use opportunities on one. On the other one, I'm basically just tracking networking relationships and networking conversations. So
Yeah. Well, that's good. What about social selling and the future of that? Do you see value there, or
um,
do you think it needs to still stay pretty human?
Well, I mean, obviously, some of the things I talk about with people in Nashville is, ways to build cadence around the communication of the sales process. Whether it's, taking a couple visits on LinkedIn to people's profiles to really understand what they're doing now, what their background is, what they have to offer to you as, just a person. Like it's not always about the sales call. And then after LinkedIn, pick up the phone, making a call. I mean, everybody uses email nowadays, Twitter, Facebook, you know, um, virtual opportunities like, WebEx, Zoom, other opportunities out there. And, we really have to, I think, pick up the phone and calling is the way to go, and
Okay.
really trying to get a hold of somebody. And then, follow up with an email. So that way, you've had like 2 or 3 touch points that they can see or hear before you send them an email, because in my personal opinion, they're not always like reading emails. And, sometimes it just helps pick up the phone. So,
Mhm. Well, especially as people are using it less and less, it's actually more and more effective in the fact that people are relying more on other channels, and now
mhm.
you're actually the more innovative outside of the box person if you just make the phone call
Yeah.
instead of all these other creative ways, which I find very interesting.
Yeah. And completely, like, I agree with you, Rebecca. Like, it's sometimes, people just want to hear somebody on the phone and
Mm.
not have to worry about a virtual meet or a virtual email or whatever. So,
Sometimes it's nice to just not be on video too when you live on it all day, every day.
yeah. And people then are like, well, it's, that you get Zoom calls going on and people are like, well, you need to show your profile. Like, I don't think you want to see me with bad hair and my ratty t-shirt, or something like that. So I think people are always kind of more self-conscious when it comes to having to be on video. So,
My favorite's when they turn their video on while they're driving somewhere. It's just
mhm.
like, please, no.
Please don't die. Please don't die while I'm
Yeah,
on
I
this
really
video.
don't want to watch how
Mhm.
this could go bad really, really fast. But
Yep. Yep.
uh, but back on the manufacturing use cases
Mhm.
around data and analytics, I was reminded of one project that I was able to do when I was basically in the services space. And it was actually really neat with a large theme park that won't be named, but
Mhm.
there's not that many of them, so you could probably guess which one.
Yeah.
They were able to monitor trash levels in the park and cue basically whoever was picking up the trash on the appropriate route based on the fullness of the trash,
Mhm.
so that they were optimizing this person's workflow and they weren't getting in a situation where there was a trash can overflowing and people complaining about that, or just the tackiness of that. And it
Mhm.
was really cool to add a device and have all these analytics and this reporting served up to be like, hey, this part of the park, super busy, trash is overflowing, need to prioritize, get over there fast and clean it up.
Yeah.
And then maybe this other area, like, don't waste your time on foot over there until
Mhm.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so there's different things that, like, to our point earlier, it's the first time people are actually paying attention to the data and trying to make a story out of it that can be customer oriented, which was the case in this scenario. Because I mean, if I walk by an overflowing trash can and I have something to throw away, I'm frustrated.
Yeah. So, like, I can't throw this, or if, like, especially like if you are like at a gas station,
Mm-hmm.
trash, builds up. And, from my retail background, I've been in the convenience store world, and that would have been super helpful because you always know which trash cans are going to be, if you're visiting a site and you're talking to the general manager, you always know which trash cans are always going to be the fullest. It's always the ones on the end of the pumps, because everybody always pulls
Yeah.
up to the end. Nobody pulls really into the middle. So, that's an excellent example, Rebecca, of like
Mm-hmm.
where, something like that would be helpful, because you could probably cut down on time spent changing trash, which is outside of the location, which obviously, creates a security hazard when people are driving around. It also creates, less trash bag usage, which could reduce the cost for a company. So,
Yeah. Man, I'd love if they would do it around the city. It'd be awesome. But my thought around that is like, they've built this solution to get that far, but what's the next step? Like, everybody's dreaming about NFTs in the metaverse,
mhm.
but I feel like there's like, we can even make trash management better. And people don't sit around and think about these problems enough. So in your experience being in that space, what are maybe some technology trends and applications that people aren't thinking about that like could go a step further to be a game changer, that aren't like, let's go to the moon or let's go to the metaverse?
Yeah. Um, that's a really good question. I think you're going to stump me on this one. So,
It's my goal.
as your goal is to stump me. Some
Mhm.
applications for data strategy that we don't currently use.
Or just that could go to the next level. Like, maybe in the gas emergency example, it's just still in its infancy of getting it from 7 steps to 3, but maybe it could be 1.
Mhm.
Maybe it could be avoided. Like, what are some ways that maybe people are hesitant to take things to the next level, but it's like it could be really impactful for their business if they would?
Yeah. I mean, I think about in the situation with the gas emergency, and it goes from being a 7-step process to maybe a 5-step process to a mobile process where
Mhm.
it's, pinging the closest person to the outage or the emergency based on an RFD chip or something like that, or
Mhm.
Bluetooth, where it's like telling this person you're closest, by pinging something. um, Something you just mentioned that I thought of was, we have a lot of severe weather, with the
Yeah.
climate change, and there might be a better way to use data strategy and analytics to relay information to
Yeah.
people who are in the way of a dangerous storm or a dangerous situation.
Mhm.
And I think about, just kind of off the top of my head, you still have to rely on TV a little bit to get weather information, thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings, hurricane warnings. And, people might have some Twitter accounts. Like I know in Nashville, they have Nashville Severe Weather, which does a great job of tracking storms. But, they don't really have any other way to send out a broadcasted message on a regular basis to protect people. So from the top of my
Mhm.
head, I think that's one way that you could actually take analytics and move it, a little faster to protect people. So,
I think avoiding any form of an emergency is good.
mhm,
It's just,
mhm,
um, especially if humans are involved. And like an example I think of is like subway threats right now in New York. Like we've got
yeah,
just a lot of subway situations that happen that to an extent maybe could be tracked and predicted, but
mhm,
it's still human. So there has to be an element of understanding human behavior and introducing that to the data that I think is something that just is going to be hard to be solved for.
mhm,
Like you can, I haven't even fully processed this idea before, but like Uber data, Uber Eats data, like you can get a pretty good idea what people do, where they're going to be, especially if they are going to the places they shouldn't be and doing things they
mhm.
shouldn't be,
Yeah,
and be able to avoid bad situations from that. But then you also don't want to over kind of estimate or predict a situation that isn't, because then you just become, a glass half
mhm,
empty person versus a glass half full. So I think there's a
yeah,
lot that can be done around that would help, especially emergency responders to know what to do. Weather's easier, humans are harder. So
yeah,
finding a way to be able to understand that and predict it. Things like 9/11, obviously we figured out ways to make sure that never happens again.
yeah.
But you know, you never know
Well, I,
what's next, and you've
well,
got
I
to stay
think
ahead of
that,
it.
yeah, I think what you just hit on though is, humans are harder to predict than the weather.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so funny because you'll read articles in the local news or the national news of, I mean, a hurricane's coming, there's the threat of severe weather for a tornado, well in advance, and people still lose their life,
Don't
people still
listen.
lose their property. And
Yeah.
thinking about what you just said about, working on a project with a very large theme park. I know I visited a very large theme park very recently, and one thing I noticed, since we are doing some projects within Keller Schrader on, analytics of recycling scrap and smelter analytics from
Mm-hmm.
loss of product. And one thing I noticed was them putting the regular trash and the recycle together in the same bag. And one thing from an analytical standpoint, I thought, I was like, well, I wonder how many of um, the housekeeping division or program are doing the same thing throughout the entire resort area. I mean,
Mhm.
what if they actually took the time to separate the recycle from the trash? Would that like reduce their cost? Because they're probably getting charged when they don't have recycling inside the trash, or when they have trash inside the recycling. So um, just stuff like that. I mean, where you're right. I mean, human error makes it hard, even if you have
Mhm.
the data that says we save money if we don't have trash in our recycling. How do we get our housekeeping department or housekeeping staff to separate the trash? So
Yeah, data very powerful, but
mhm.
only so powerful as you apply it
Yep.
and you use it and you're willing to be open to the true story it tells. I think that's
Mhm.
where sometimes human error from a data analysis perspective can get misconstrued because you want the data to tell you the story you're already believing
Mhm.
instead of letting it tell you a story that is actually based on facts.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, um, you have to have people who are creating questionnaires or creating the information that you're trying to curate. So, data quality and data curation are always the two biggest roadblocks to advanced analytics, because ultimately there's going to be a human involved somewhere to figure out how to get the data created, how to curate the data and what you're looking for. And picking the wrong data could set you back or allow you to not be as successful as you would hope to be. So
Mhm. That's good. I like it. I
mhm.
want to switch back to what you call salesology just a
Yeah.
little bit more and just curious what you're learning in the audience that you sell to now, because I think you've sold to all kinds of different personas.
Mhm.
So these folks that maybe are a little bit more technology adverse, a little more hesitant
Mhm.
and just cautious as they go to leveraging the power of data.
Mhm.
What have you learned about how to approach those relationships and those folks and put them through the right sales process?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was realizing that for the most part, you had to have a vendor partner to work with you um, on a project, whether it was a security project, a network project, something in the realm of virtualization. And knowing now, I'm learning that they are a little bit more driven than I am, which is extremely
Mhm.
hard for me to believe, because I'm extremely driven. But you're talking 4 or 5 times a year, end of quarters, end of years. I mean, they're really pushing for deals to get done. So it's really balancing, how do you approach your client to save them money versus maybe pestering them to the point of alienating them and losing the relationship. So from a salesology standpoint, you really have to understand them and research them as an inner person, and understand their persona before you approach them with this is what I found within our last conversation from an opportunity standpoint. This is where I would like to proceed with this product or this group of products. And that's the biggest thing I've had to learn in moving from a retail um, from like a retail hospitality background. Is
Mhm.
it's a different way to approach business, and a different way when you have to partner with a vendor for the majority of the time. So
That makes sense. So about your drive, I know you've always got lots of things going on and always trying to build your own little James empire.
yeah.
What are some of the things you're focused on right now that you're trying to make an impact in the world with?
um I'm really focusing on this career with Keller Schrader at this point. We are definitely unique in the fact that we're an ESOP, or an employee owned company.
Very cool.
So everybody who is an employee, not just obviously not a contractor, has a piece of the puzzle. So not only do you have a responsibility for your position, your business unit, but you ultimately affect the bottom line with your decisions of the company and the return on the company. So really focused on Keller Schrader, kind of, trying to lead the charge in Nashville to build our brand awareness and our market development down here. On top of that, we have a lot of people in our stable of employee owners who focus on other projects. I still love to dabble in music. I still love to DJ from time to time.
Yeah.
I still love to be on the soccer field and officiate. Definitely love to do little side businesses, little hobbies that turn into side businesses, but mostly just focusing on Keller Schrader at this point and trying to be the best entrepreneurial employee owner I can be. So
Entrepreneur.
Yes. So
yeah, or linchpin. I like that term.
So yeah. So yeah, and focusing on I traveled a lot for the last 3 years in the retail space, in upper management, and definitely being back home full time, spending time with the family and with friends has been amazing as well. So
that's awesome. I like it.
Mhm.
Sounds all very fulfilling.
It is very fulfilling. It's probably the best it's really been in a long time. So it's really good. So
that's awesome. I want to switch gears a little bit to principles now, and I would love to hear from you. What is a core principle that you've lived by to be successful in business?
I feel like every morning I get up and I always like to do a little meditation, a little cross between spirituality and business building in my head. And one thing that I always thought of a guiding principle, and something that always kind of sticks to me, is one of the Bible verses of the fool folds his hands and consumes his own flesh. And for me, that just means not being complacent in pretty much all walks of life. Whether it's being complacent professionally, being complacent personally, like always being there for my fellow employee owners at Keller Schrader, always being there for my wife and kids, just being a better person. And I feel like in the last year I've really embraced that and made some changes personally and professionally. And like I just said earlier, it's the best it's been in a long time, and I feel very blessed at this point. So
very cool. Well, James, thanks for coming on the show and sharing.
Thank you.
Appreciate your story.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time. I appreciate you being open to having me on the show, and I look forward to our future conversations. So
beautiful. Sounds good. We'll talk again soon.
Okay, bye-bye.